Hi. So in this video, we're going to look at what an array is in JavaScript. But let's start by answering the question, what is a data structure? Well, in computer science, we use the term data structure to describe ways that we can store our data and organize our data. Arrays are a data structure in JavaScript. Arrays can be stored within a variable, and inside of the array, we can store any of the primitive values. Arrays can also store other arrays. The special thing about an array is that it is an ordered list. So if we have data that we need to preserve the order of, then we would want to use an array. The days of the week might be a good example, but another could be social media posts which need to be shown by order of date. So let's have a basic look at an array. When we create an array, we use two square brackets. If you're familiar with strings, then similarly with arrays, each item in the array is called an element. Each of these elements has a numbered position called an index. These indices start counting from 0, so as with strings, we can say that arrays are 0 indexed. Let's create an array which will contain the numbers 1 to 5. We'll do this with what's called an array literal. So we'll start by declaring a variable called count to 5, and using the equals operator, we'll assign to this an array. So we use two square brackets. Inside the array, we place the numbers 1 to 5, separated by commas. Let's console log the array. We see that the array returned to us has the values 1 through to 5. We could easily create an array of mixed data types. Let's create a new array to achieve this, and we'll call this one mixed. Inside the array, we'll start by adding the number 1. Next, we'll add null. Then we'll add the string hi, and then the boolean false. Let's console log this array. We can see the new array with the mixed data types. So let's go back to array indices. As I previously mentioned, elements in an array have an index, just like when you were working with strings. These indices start from 0, and you can access the array elements in the exact same way by using square brackets. So if we wanted to access the first element of the mixed array, we would do the following. We use the array name, which is mixed, and then using square brackets, we pass in 0. 1 is returned, as this is the first element of the mixed array. We can get the length of the array by using the name of the array and then the length property. We would type the name of the array, followed by a dot, followed by the length property. 4 is returned as there are 4 elements inside of the array. Unlike strings, which are immutable, meaning that they cannot be changed, arrays are mutable, which means we can change them. So this means if we want to change an array element, we can access and update it directly. So if we wanted to change the last element to be true, we would do the following. We would use the name of the array and then the index of the element we want to change. In our case, this is 3. The last element, which is the element at the index of 3, has been changed to true. If you are familiar with the primitive data types in JavaScript, such as numbers, booleans, strings, null and undefined, you will likely know that when you store one of these data types in a variable, they are stored by value, so it's the value itself which is stored. Arrays and objects are much larger, or at least they can be, and they can use much more memory. So these are what we call reference types. When you use reference types, it's a reference to the data that is stored in memory. It's a bit like saying you have an address for where you live. It's an address to the data that's stored in the computer's memory, as opposed to the data itself being stored. Due to this fact, we can change the data stored inside the array itself, which is why we can say that arrays are mutable. We can create an array using const, and then change the data inside of the array. So let's create a new array, which we'll store inside a variable using const called count3. The array will contain the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Let's try to change the last element of the array, which is at the index of 2, to be true. So we use the array name, and then using square brackets we access the element, which is at the index of 2. We then use the equals operator and set the value to true. Now let's console log the count3 array. We can see that the last element has been changed to the Boolean value of true, so this also worked. All of this also means that when we use an array method, the method will directly impact the array, as opposed to when you work with strings, where you have to manually save the changes yourself. The only thing you can't do when the array is created with const is to change the entire array. If you wanted to do this, then you'd have to create the array using let. So we'll try changing our count3 array to contain the values 4, 5, and 6. So we'll say count3 equals 4, 5, and 6. We get an uncaught type error with the message assignment to a constant variable. So if we wanted to do this, the array must be created with let. We'll create a new array and give this a go. We'll store this array in a variable which uses let, and we'll call it letters. Inside the array, we'll place the letters A, B, and C. Now let's try to change the letters to equal D, E, and F. We don't get any error this time. When we recall the letters array, we can see it has successfully been updated. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more content.